Good evening. I'm hereby calling to order the November 26, 2018 meeting of Mayfield Heights City Council. May I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Ballestrea?
Present.
Mr. DeJohn?
Here.
Mrs. Finney?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Trussi?
Here.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which I stand, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin this evening's meeting, I'd like everyone to join me in a moment of silence in honor of Rebecca Platowski and Olivia Schneider. Next is the approval of the minutes from the council meeting on November 12, 2018. I trust everyone had time to read them over. Here's a motion to approve the minutes from the council meeting on November 12, 2018. Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to those minutes? Mrs. Sabetta, I'm sorry.
Yes, ordinance number 2018-35 states that Mr. Ballestrea did vote and he was not in attendance.
Good catch. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain. That was absent.
Thank you, Mr. Ballestrea. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved as written. Next on our agenda are correspondence and announcement. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of officers, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. I hope everyone had a warm, wonderful, and blessed Thanksgiving. As I mentioned at the last council meeting, the city is working on a new project after we secured a grant from NOACA. The Transportation for Livable Communities initiative will allow us to study ways to improve the transportation needs of pedestrians and cyclists throughout our city and to connect to neighboring cities. Well, we did assemble a committee of stakeholders, which includes representatives from the city, schools, mayors from neighboring communities, Northeast Ohio Sewer District, ODOT, the Chamber of Commerce, and RTA, and also some businesses and residents. A stakeholders committee meeting was held on November 14th here at City Hall. And AECOM presented their findings from a study that helped identify ways to improve that pedestrian and bicycle traffic. As a result of that meeting, a public meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 5th at our community center to present plans to the public. AECOM's study will prioritize feasibility and funding for the project and determine what is best for the stakeholders and for the city. So we do have that posted to our website, to social media, and there's also going to be an ad in the Sun newspaper also announcing that meeting. So we'd like to get as much community representation as possible and input as possible at those meetings. Hillcrest Meals on Wheels has shared with us an opportunity to support the important work they do. Now through January 31st, if you log on to honeybakedfundraising.com/fundraisers/HMOW_Inc. That is all on our website and posted to our site, so you don't have to remember all that. And if you order a gift card to be shipped to your home or an address of choice, Hillcrest Meals on Wheels will get 20% of that total. Hillcrest Meals on Wheels plays an important part in many of the lives of our residents, and this is a good chance to show our gratitude and support. Last night was the city's annual holiday lighting ceremony, which is sponsored by the newly named Mayfield Heights Resident Advisory Committee, formerly the Mayor's Community Council. Was a fantastic event as usual. It was very well attended by residents of all ages. Santa and Mrs. Claus were there to listen to the children's toy wishes as well as take photos. The lights and decorations, as you could see, look great, and I want to thank the Service Department and Service Director Joe Finaro. The lights went on right on cue, and I'd like to thank members of the Fire Department too who helped clean up afterwards. And in the midst of our celebration last night, we did take a moment to acknowledge the 2 lives that were lost as a result of a tragic incident that took place in our city last week. And we did observe a moment of silence in honor of Rebecca Pletnewski and her daughter, Olivia Schneider. Please keep them in your prayers. I would like to recognize our police department for the exceptional work they did on this case, which allowed them to arrest and charge a suspect in this horrible crime. We can only hope that there is some comfort to the victims' families knowing that we have somebody in custody. There is some news that we just got from Dominion East Ohio Gas that I wanted to share with everybody. They will commence emergency gas line repairs that will close 1 or 2 lanes on Mayfield Road starting Thursday and lasting approximately 10 days. The affected area will be from Gates Mills Towers to the East Gate Back Drive. They will have traffic control on site to try and mitigate the congestion, but I'm sure it's going to be rough going in that area during peak times. And lastly, I wanted to say happy birthday to a guy who comes to every meeting and who is an amazing supporter of the city and all of our functions, Joe Newman, who will be 90 years young Saturday. So happy birthday, Joe. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy birthday, Joe. Are there any questions for the mayor? Seeing none, we'll move on to Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? Next is Director of Finance, Mr. Trivy.
Oh, for a change, I do have a report.
No way.
Yes.
Okay.
No, about 4:30 this afternoon, the Auditor of State released their annual audit for 2017. It'll be posted on our website later this week. It was a unqualified opinion, which is a clean audit, and you'll be able to review the entire report, like I said, on the website.
Thank you, Mr. Trivy. We're really going to miss your long reports when you leave. Any questions for Mr. Trivy? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll begin with the Building Committee. Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Is there any questions for Mrs. Snyder? Next, we'll move on to Finance and Audit Committee. Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. No report.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we'll go to Legislative Committee. Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Teresi. Are there any questions for Mrs. Teresi? Next, we'll move to Public Works and Service Committee. Mr. Balestria.
Thank you. The Public Works and Services Committee did not meet, so hence I have no report as well.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Is there any questions for Mr. Balestria? Next, we'll move on to Parks and Recs Committee, and I know Mr. Mano's going to have a report.
Very short one. Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chairman. It's not too late to purchase your tickets for the Breakfast with Santa, which is scheduled for Saturday, December the 8th. The cost is $7 per person, includes breakfast, train ride, picture with Santa, and a story with Mrs. Claus. Advanced reservations are required. Call the Recreation Department to make your reservation. Wildcat Sport and Fitness. Get a jump on your New Year's resolution and start working out at Wildcat Sport and Fitness. Memberships are very reasonable. Individuals are $32, families are $105, senior citizens are $12 for the year. Any other information on any program from the Recreational Commission, call the office at 442-2627. And there is a Park and Rec meeting in these chambers tomorrow night, and the public is welcome to attend. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. I actually have a question. Do you know what time the breakfast is at?
The,
Couldn't find it online.
I think that it's
9:30?
9:30 or 10.
9:30.
9:30.
Thank you. Also, Mr. Ward, kudos. I hear lots and lots of people are now joining the fitness center and leaving their gyms. More and more young people, too. Good thing. Any questions then for Mr. Mano? Seeing none, we'll move on to safety and transportation. Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. No report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Next, we'll move on to Board of Zoning Appeals. Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. There are several resolutions on the agenda tonight that we can address when they come forth. I encourage all applicants to speak during the public portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any questions of Mrs. Sabetta? Next, we'll move on to Planning Commission. Mr. Balestria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Planning Commission did not have an agenda, therefore I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Balestria. Are there any questions for Mr. Balestria? Seeing none, we'll now move on to the public portion of the meeting. Pursuant to City Code, each person will be allowed 5 minutes to speak, with the maximum 30 minutes allowed for the entire public portion. Although it is not a time for public debate, this is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please know there will be no personal attacks or comments allowed. Also, if you're here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized, and then approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:15. I will open up the public portion. Sir with the flannel shirt.
My name is Bobby Benjamin, and I'm a broker for an applicant for zoning variance. And my applicant is here tonight. He's the franchisee for the national leader in the quick serve wings and fries business. They're in the top 50 of restaurants in the nation in quick service. They have several stores in the region and would like to be in Mayfield Heights. We have a spot in mind at 6649 Mayfield Road that is currently occupied by a Boost Mobile store that is in default of their lease. We have made a deal pursuant, contingent on zoning, with the owner of the building, Mr. Albino, who's from Chesterland, and we need to consummate that deal only if we get the approval for the slight zoning change that the zoning board has granted us through city council next. The gist of it is, the building has several tenants, and the building itself does not comply with the parking code today. If we change our use from the Boost Mobile use, which is retail, to a restaurant use, quick serve, without waitress service, and with no delivery vehicle, we would need to add one more space. And to summarize, the current code is shy of 23 spaces where it would need to be to meet code. When we come in, if we are allowed to, it'll be 24 spaces, so the net change is one space. Also, it's not in the code addressed, but the fact is we do 75% of the wings and fries business between 7 p.m. and midnight, when the other stores that are adjacent to these will be either closed or not operating, such as the chiropractor. Boost Mobile won't stay open that late. In other words, the actual parking will be empirically more available in the peak hours than we operate. But as far as zoning goes, after 2 applications, one of which was tabled and the second one was approved, the zoning board graciously agreed to get behind this potential change in use, which, as I say, the building will never meet code for parking as code is currently written, because the building came before the code. As a matter of fact, Master Pizza, which is in the same building, opened in 1955. And they've been pretty darn successful. They now have like 9 other stores, but that was the first one. And we'd like to join that business and do space occupied for many, many years to come. As a matter of fact, my franchisee owner is going to invest approximately $350,000 in the space to modify and beautify it, not counting some of the equipment, just the space. And we'd like to get the opportunity to go forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard this evening? Sir in the back.
Good evening, council members, mayor. I apologize for the casual attire. I actually ran home, changed real quick, fed my kids, and came here.
Please state your name and address for the
My
record.
name is Brian Cab. My address is 1628 Longwood, Mayfield Heights. One of the things I have is a variance for an extended driveway. One of the issues that we have right now is we have 4 drivers with 4 vehicles. Our driveway currently holds about a half a car, and we have a 1-car detached garage. So the issue is we've been parking in the street, which is a big inconvenience. If some of you have gone down Radnor, as you know, that is a busy cut-through street. The other issue we have in the wintertime is that we utilize our neighbors' driveways due to the snow ban, and that creates an issue with our neighbors. So this will actually alleviate the issue, those issues. In the boarding zone, the boarding committee did approve our variance and is in front of you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else like to be heard this evening? Well, now would be your time to speak if you'd like to come up and state your name and for the record. Name and address. You have 5 minutes total to speak.
My name's Michael Clayton. I'm from Acme Fence in Akron, Ohio. My address is 1251 Girard Street, Akron, Ohio. We're seeking a variance on a fence, and it's just a standard white vinyl picket fence. The problem is that your ordinance says that you can't have 2 different kinds of fence in the same yard. But the problem is it's very unfair because the neighbor behind them has an old rusted chain link fence. So this person is trying to improve their property. It's about a $9,000 improvement, but they're not allowed to do it because the ordinance states that the 2 different types of fence. So we just think it's very unfair because it basically penalizes people for trying to improve their property. So anybody that's trying to put in a fence, if the neighbor already has a certain style of fence, then that dictates what you're allowed to have. And we just don't think that's fair. We would just like a variance to proceed with the fence project.
Thank you so much.
When do you decide on this?
This evening.
Okay.
Anybody else like to be heard this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion at 7:20. President to chair this resolution since I have a personal relationship with the property owner.
Thank you. Resolution 2018-69, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Acting Chairman. Resolution number 2018-69, a resolution reversing the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in determining a self-storage facility use proposed by John Molken on behalf of Fairchild Management Company for 1413 Golden Gate Boulevard, Mayfield Heights, Ohio, also known as permanent parcel numbers 862-06-050, 862-06-071, 862-06-072, and 862-06-073. Is a use consistent with the uses authorized in a U4 local retail wholesale district and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Balestreo, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJong?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Abstain.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Abstain.
The vote is 5-0 with 2 abstentions. This will be placed on second reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyder.
Third reading.
Third reading.
Third reading. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-70. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-70, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an amendment to the PCAS site lease agreement with STC2 LLC by and through Global Signal Acquisitions 3 LLC regarding an antenna and appurtenances located upon the real property known as Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Numbers 863-05-019 and 863-05-058, City Hall Complex, and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Could I have a motion to place on second reading?
Move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Mano. Could I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-70 is placed on second reading.
Madam
Next-
Chair, if I can interrupt for 1 second.
Mayor?
Am I correct in, before we get too much farther, Mr. Murphy, 2018-69 is being placed on second reading, not
It
third.
is on second reading.
So it's on
I
second
read
reading.
it at second reading.
Right,
and
so
then
it's
there
not
was a
placed on
motion.
third.
No, it's on second reading.
Right. I just,
That's how I read it originally. But Mr. Mano, you said third, and she said third. So it's second.
Second reading.
Second reading.
It is second
Three
reading.
comes after 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're good. 2018-70 has been placed on second reading. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-71. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-71, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Goodman Real Estate Services Group, LLC, on behalf of M.A. Mayfield, LLC, 6641-6649 Mayfield Road, a variance to reduce the minimum parking spaces necessary from 47 to 23 to permit a counter-service restaurant, Wingstop, to operate on the property. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Numbers 862-15-025 and 861-15-026. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Okay, we heard from the applicant, and is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Teresi, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Discussion, I know this was unanimous, and I'm sure Mrs. Sabetta has a lot to add.
This was a request for a 24-space parking variance with the condition of no delivery vehicle allowed. The building is non-conforming, and it has been operating 23 spaces short of the minimum required for many years. It's 48. Based on the present occupancy, it has been determined a total of 46 spaces, 23 on the site and a 23 shortage. The recommendation, if a variance is to be granted, should be granted for the entire building, the center. A 24-space variance is needed for the entire center, including Wingstop, with no delivery vehicle. The request was granted. Committee saw that the strict enforcement of the ordinance would impose on the owner a practical difficulty. It was a unanimous approval. The applicant proposed a net space of 713 square feet to the present occupants' parking spaces, without a delivery vehicle, 1 space difference. The non-conforming change of use is the counter service. being a different use than present, requires parking ordinance restrictions. The change of use changes the parking requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions? Mr. Belstria?
Yeah, Mr. Sabetta, maybe you can answer, maybe you can't, but you're referring to the center versus the building. My understanding is there's 2 or 3 buildings in the whole center, the plaza. So the parking spaces we're referring to are the ones that are just in front of those buildings, in front of the buildings that represent what the applicant is seeking. And that would include like Master Pizza, I think the chiropractor, the mobile service. That constitutes one building, and those spaces in front of that one building have 23 spaces. I just want to make sure I am understanding that correctly, because I think, and I know Tom's here, but I think there's 3 buildings that constitute that whole, 2 or 3 buildings that constitute that whole center. Mayor, do you know that?
This, I can answer the question.
Go ahead, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you. You are correct. It's the chiropractor, the pizza, the salon, and the proposed Wingstop. That's the building center.
Okay, when you say center, I'm thinking of the whole plaza.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure we all understand that it's just those spaces in front of that one building.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. DeJohn?
Mrs. Sabetta, do you
No,
know?
you can't. You have to ask to address Mrs. Sabetta.
Yeah.
To the chair.
Thank you, Madam.
You ask your question, and then we'll refer to her. How's that sound?
Thank you, Madam President. Mrs. Sabetta, can you tell me if the business owners, the pizza place, and the other businesses there were notified of this?
The other businesses there were added into the number of parking. And they too have this, they don't have a variance. No one there has a variance. They too have the same problem that this gentleman is pointing out.
Yep. But do you know if they're notified that this restaurant is coming in there?
I don't know if we notify her.
Mr. Jameson?
If I may.
Mr. Murphy, please.
The property owner is the applicant. They're the ones who filed the application. M.A. Mayfield LLC. That is the property owner.
I understand that.
And then the BZA would notify, like they do every neighbor, the surrounding property owners.
So they were notified? The
Yes.
businesses, Master Pizza and the other 3 businesses or 2 businesses there?
Mr. Jameson,
No.
you please approach the podium.
Tom Jameson, Building Commissioner. There are 2 buildings there. One is owned by, his name escapes me right now, but Cipriani owns from chiropractor to the west, owns all that. He was notified because he's the owner of the building. Albino is the applicant, and obviously notified, he would be responsible for notifying his tenants. And then any surrounding businesses like they should be all listed, the people that were notified, in the minutes of the zoning board.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson.
Sure.
Any other questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion to, or can I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mr. Belstria?
Yes.
Mrs. Trissy?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes, Resolution 2018-71 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-72. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-72, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Landerbrook Point LLC on behalf of Speedion, 5875 Landerbrook Drive, a variance to permit a patio to be constructed off the southwest side of the building, 8.9 feet from the property line. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-29-011. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabata. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Discussion, I know this was unanimous also. Mrs. Sabetta?
Thank you. Yes, this is a request for a yard setback variance to build a patio. The patio's 20 by 48. It will not be visible by the street. It's enclosed with extensive landscaping. It's an open space, built-in bench, and a couple of tables. The applicant explained that the newer types of working environment for tech employees, this is a needed amenity to help the company grow. The applicant is looking to retain a long-term tenant, and this would be private use for this tenant. There is plenty of space, 200 feet from the neighboring parking lot. The request was granted. The committee saw the practical difficulty imposed on the use of the property. It was a unanimous approval.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions? I'm sorry, any questions for Mrs. Sabetta? Seeing none, could I have a roll call, please, Lisa?
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-72 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-73. Mr. Murphy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-73, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Brian Cab and Jenny Cab, 1628 Longwood Drive, a variance to widen the driveway on said property to 25 feet at the sidewalk and extending straight back to 11.5 feet next to the garage. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 861-23-035. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Snyder,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. And we heard from the applicant this evening. Any discussion, Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes, this is a request for a variance to widen their driveway to the equivalent of a two-car garage. Considering the extreme shortness of the existing driveway from the garage opening to the sidewalk, the side street parking, the snow bands, the neighborly parking, and all these neighbors were notified, each sent back having no objections to this variance. The committee saw this as an inherited practical difficulty, and it was a unanimous approval.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. I've driven by, so I know the driveway. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes, Resolution 2018-73 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-74. Mr. Murphy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-74, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in denying to Nassar Almaroji, 6633 Monterey Drive, a variance to erect a 4-foot-high white vinyl picket fence on the rear property line adjacent to a chain link fence already existing on the rear property line. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-18-031. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Belstria,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Mano. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tressi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes. Can I have a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Belstria, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Discussion, once again, we heard from the applicant, Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes, this is a request, a variance to build a 4-foot vinyl picket fence on the rear property line adjacent to the existing chain link fence. This is, let's see, a board-on-board or a solid fence on a rear property line so as to cover the chain link. That's section 118306H. The appearance and beautification considered, the committee was divided on this vote. It was a 2-2, one committee member was absent. The vote failed. Applicant did not demonstrate a practical difficulty and the request was denied.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions? Seeing none, roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Belstria.
Mrs. Abetta, can you maybe, because the minutes don't reflect how Mr. DeLilio and Mr. Kramer felt about it, since it was a split decision. Do you know the rationale why? I mean, I understand maybe your decision and Mr. Wagner's decision based on the ordinance, but, you know, I wanted to know what maybe their take was.
Yes, we voted toward the ordinance. It's a new ordinance, and we voted toward the ordinance. Mr. Kramer thought that the property line could be moved up, and it was explained in the building department that even if they did move it up, somebody would have to be responsible for cleaning between the two fences, and that the picket fence would not cover the chain link fence.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Can I have a follow-up?
Let's let Mrs. Tressi
Oh,
go
sorry.
and then,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mrs. Sabetta, did anyone go out and measure the height of that chain link fence?
They are both 4 feet, is what we were told. It was not measured.
Mr. Belstria?
I was just, yes, thank you. I was wondering if the property owner was willing to move that fence in his property further and be responsible for his property beyond the fence, if that was ever discussed as a possibility.
I'm going to say, there he is. Okay, I'm going to say someone did ask him.
And the answer?
The building department said that how would you get something between the two fences to mow the lawn and take care of? That's where the beautification came into place.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mrs. Tressi?
Mrs. Sabetta, did anyone talk to the property owner at the rear of that property? On the back of the property? That chain, I did go and look, and that chain link fence is rather rusted and slanted, not standing up straight. Was there a possibility that that property owner would not mind if there was a white vinyl fence there and they took down that rusted chain link fence?
That also was mentioned, and apparently in one of the pictures, it showed that the chain link fence did wrap around and seemed to go through down the part of the yard. So it would be more than the back fence.
Sir, you would need to come up to the podium. Please state your name and address again for the record.
Mike Clayton from Acme Fence, 1251 Girard Street, Akron, Ohio. The neighbor in the back was approached about it. He did not want to move his fence. Because the homeowner offered to even pay for the removal and the haul out of it. He didn't want to do it. We're willing, and the homeowner's willing to move it in 2-3 feet, whatever it takes to maintain that property.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Mr. DeJohn?
Just a clarification for the public. So this was a 2-2 vote, which a tie means it was defeated, and that a no vote would be permitting this, and a yes vote would be going along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. Belistria,
No.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Would you explain again?
If you're voting yes, then you're going to be confirming denying the fence.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
No.
Mrs. Snyder,
No.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes,
4-3.
the motion has failed. Confirmed? Oh, it's 4 positive? Okay,
Yes.
the motion is
4-4,
confirmed.
sorry.
Sorry, 2018, I'm sorry, I'm really tired after the long weekend. 2018-74 has been adopted. Next in our resolution is 2018-75, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
No, sir. Go ahead. Yes, it was. Mr. Murphy?
Oh,
No, no.
it's not approved.
No, it was denied, I'm sorry. We went along with the Board of Zoning in going with their denial. Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-75, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in denying to Mark Lesko, 1318 Washington Boulevard, a variance to allow the existing fence on the property to remain at a height of 7 feet above grade. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-14-068. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Balestria, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Okay, discussion again, Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes, this is a request on a 1-foot variance to allow an existing fence on the left side property line. The applicant explained that he was at the BZA due to a complaint. He had a fence permit for a 6-foot board-on-board fence, which expired. Applicant put up a different fence without a permit and is now looking for relief. The building department said a new permit was necessary with a sketch illustrating the manner of construction on the slope under 118306I. Since the BZA meeting, the building department did receive a note of no objection to this variance from the left side neighbor. The committee felt the applicant did not demonstrate a practical difficulty to have a 7-foot fence and a 6-foot acknowledgement. It was a unanimous denial.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions? None? Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belistria,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes, Resolution 2018-75 has been adopted. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2018-76. Mr. Murphy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2018-76, a resolution confirming the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in denying to Archer Sign Company on behalf of Chase Bank, 1435 Som Center Road, a variance to allow 3 identification signs larger than permitted on the north, south, and west walls of the building. Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 862-29-017. First reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Balestria. Roll call, please, on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Sabetta,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Mano. Discussion, we'll go back to Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes, this is a request variance from the Mayfield Heights Corridor Design Manual. Under signage standards, 3 of the exterior wall signs are 1.61 square feet over the 24-foot allowed by code. That would be the north, the west, and the south walls. The applicant states, proportionately and aesthetically, the larger signs look better on the building. The chairman did point this to the applicants, and the committee saw that the applicant did not demonstrate a practical difficulty due to the clear visibility on Som Center Road, Mayfield Road, and the easy access into the center from both of these roads. This was a unanimous denial, and a reminder to council. Chick-fil-A also came to the BZA for the same type of request.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Any questions? Mr. Jameson.
Just a correction to the way this is written. The 3 signs that they're requesting the variance for are the north, south, and east. The main sign is west, faces Som Center, and it complies. So we should change that in the
Got that, Mr. Murphy?
Need to change the minutes.
We'll change the minute. Thank you. Any other questions?
We'll clarify.
Thank you.
Correct these two.
Anything else? Roll call, please, Lisa.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes. Resolution 2018-76 has been adopted. There's one ordinance this evening, 2018-34. Mr. Murphy.
Before we move off that, just to clarify, Mr. Jameson, the sign to the west, the variance was not requested for that. It's north, south, and east. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ordinance number 2018-34, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Mayfield Heights to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Laborers Local Union 860 Service Department Bargaining Unit and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria. Have a second? Second by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Tressi?
Abstain.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Abstain.
Mr. DeJohn?
Abstain.
Mr. Belestria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
4-3, no suspension.
Okay. No suspension, and ordinance 2018-34 is now on second reading. We have no motions this evening, so is there any new business or comments from the council? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Balestria, second by Mrs. Snyder. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now adjourned. Thank you for joining us this evening. Have a great night.